Namo. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So today we're going to continue speaking about Balaram. And yesterday we were talking about the empowerment of Balaram and how that empowerment is not dependent on our personal qualification, because sometimes we look at our qualification and then we limit ourselves by our qualification rather than understand that the real qualification is bhakti and purity, and Krishna can empower us. So I want to continue discussing that topic of empowerment and how Krishna can use us, and especially the empowerment of Lord Balaram, and Balaram as the Adi Guru or the Akhanda Guru Tattva, the original Guru. He's Krishna's Guru. Balaram is even Krishna's Guru, what to speak of our Guru. Hari Prabhu ki jai. So I want to read some things that will continue the discussion that we had yesterday. And then if you have any questions you can ask, and then we can expand the discussion, but I want to first begin. I have to find it. Yeah, here it is. So Srila Prabhupada says, I'm not sure where he says this. This might be in a lecture or it might be in a discussion of a song. If one has no connection with Nitai Balaram, then even though one is a very learned scholar or jnani, or has taken birth in a very respectable family, these assets will not help him. We must therefore conquer the enemies of Krishna consciousness with the strength received from Balaram. So we had spoken about this a bit yesterday, but I just wanted to bring in this quote because Prabhupada is making the point, the same point that I was making. And so I think what's significant here is Prabhupada saying, even one may be a very learned scholar or born in a respectable family, but these assets won't help him. And so why is this significant? Because a lot of the hesitation that we have to do something which we think we're incapable of doing is because we don't think we have the qualification. And here Prabhupada's saying, even if you have the qualification, if you lack the mercy of Balaram, you're not going to be successful. And so basically what Prabhupada is saying is that nobody can surmount the influence of material energy. So your high birth, you're born in a nice Brahmin family, and you're very learned, that's not going to help you. It's not sufficient. Contrarily, you're not born in a high family, you don't have a lot of knowledge, but you have the mercy of Balaram through Srila Prabhupada, who is representative of Balaram, and then you can conquer all the enemies. So I think that's significant because so many of us kind of make excuses for our lack of Krishna consciousness. And in one sense you could say our lack of Krishna consciousness is simply the lack of mercy that we're, as we said yesterday, we're squeezing out or we're able to get. Just like we see when you're in the association of more advanced devotees, you feel more Krishna conscious. When you're regularly hearing Bhagavatam, you're chanting good rounds, you feel more Krishna conscious. When you're in the holy Dham, you feel more Krishna conscious. So that Krishna consciousness is a gift which is coming to us when we are doing the right things or we're in the right association or the right atmosphere. So it's not fully manifest because we had a good birth, which we didn't, or because we're such great scholars, which we're not. We don't even know, most of us don't even know Sanskrit. So, what really is our qualification? And one time, Prabhupada was in India, and his disciples were being criticized as not being scholarly, not having proper culture, and we are very criticizable because according to standards of purity, Brahminical standards and so forth, especially the disciples in the early days, they could be criticized. And Prabhupada said, yes, I know. He said, but they have one thing. And he didn't say this one thing is the real thing, but he implied that. He said, they have one thing, and that is they have faith in me and faith in my instruction. So I may be fool number one, but if I have a guru whose instruction is perfect, I have faith in his instruction, I execute it, then even though I'm full number one, I'm doing something which is pure. More pure than someone who's more pure than me, but doesn't have complete faith in the instruction of their guru, and some way perhaps may contaminate those instructions. Prabhupada, many times he said, I actually just read this morning. He said, actually all I did in my service to you is to take what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati has given me and give it to you without any adulteration. Give it to you purely. He said, that's what I did. And there is a conversation, probably you've heard it, where Prabhupada was asked, well, if you leave early, can someone else instruct us? And he said, the problem is, if they say anything different from what I say, they say one word different, you'll become confused. So Prabhupada saw as his service to preserve the message of the disciplic succession, especially the message of his spiritual master, and then deliver that message. So what we get is something pure, and because it's pure, it works. It's like pure medicine. It works. If it's adulterated, it may not work or may not work well. So we are not pure. We've been given a pure message. We have faith in that message. We don't adulterate that message. And therefore, the effect of our work is much greater than if we were great scholars in high birth, but in some way we adulterated that message. In some way, we didn't have faith in that message. So I think that it's extremely important, because everything is based on faith. And in order to deliver a message purely, one has to have absolute faith in it, and absolute faith in what Prabhupada said. I was thinking this morning how I've observed this in my own life, and I observe this with my disciples, that it's not easy to fully accept 100% everything your guru says, because your guru might say something and it just doesn't, either it doesn't seem right, or you're just afraid, you can't follow it, or you're afraid you can't execute that instruction, or it's demanding so much of you, you'd rather just not think about the instruction. So to have a guru and follow in the instruction and have faith in that instruction, although in one sense, from an onlooker's point of view, it might seem easy, but in another sense, you're dealing with your whole internal world of resistance, your internal world of lack of faith. So even though the instructions are straightforward and simple, it may not be so straightforward and simple for us to follow them. And so, if you study Prabhupada's life, you see his adherence to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's instructions are perfect. His understanding of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's instructions are perfect. It's really interesting. There's a book by Bhakti Vikas Swami, an amazing book, 3-volume book of the life of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And when you read that book and you learn about his life and what he taught and the situations he was in and how he dealt with them, you understand that Prabhupada was perfectly following them. It becomes so obvious that Prabhupada understood deeply the mood and instructions of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, and that his service to us was just to pass them down. And he knew if he passed them down, we would get something pure and it would work. And if we passed it down, it would also work. So what's the point? Well, the point is I may not be pure. Not that I may not be. I am not. We're all coming from an impure position. We're not coming as great spiritual scholars, intellectuals. We don't have great memories. We don't know Sanskrit. We may not be that philosophical. We've committed many sinful activities, and many young people have engaged in breaking all the regulative principles most of their lives. So those qualifications we don't have. But Prabhupada is saying, if you can hear the message from your guru and you can somehow understand it by his mercy and you can deliver it, then you can do miracles. Even though basically from an objective point of view, we're pretty much useless. And Prabhupada sometimes said that much, that he gave the example, you have a gourd, which is what a tambour is made out of, and you have a string, and you put it together, ding, 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 ding. You have an instrument like an ektar. So he said, it's like he came, Prabhupada said, I came, I'm loitering in New York, and I find you're just a string, and we put it together, and Prabhupada is playing us, and he's making music. So, what is our value? We don't really have much qualification, but our value is that we could follow Prabhupada's instructions and we could give it to others. And then Prabhupada could use us, Krishna could use us, and then by using us we could do amazing things. Whereas people who are qualified, more renounced, more learned, have better birth, if they deviate from the instruction of their guru, then they're useless. And I wanted to look this up online because Prabhupada, he talks about this in several places. And I think the word is asara. So I'm just going to look up that word. I didn't have time before class. Asara. Yeah, asara. Let me see if we get Chaitanya Charitamrita. Maybe. Yeah, here it is. Let me read this. This is very, very interesting. And this sounds like Prabhupada is criticizing his godbrothers. Prabhupada respected his godbrothers and appreciated his godbrothers. And he apologized to his godbrothers for any criticism that he may have made. But he wanted to educate us so that we wouldn't make the same mistakes that Prabhupada, that his godbrothers made. And so I'm sure Prabhupada had some reluctance in putting this in written form in his books because it appears to be a criticism of his godbrothers. But it's asking an edification for our sake, because the Gaudiya Math was a very powerful organization, but it ran into difficulty because they disobeyed. They didn't follow clearly Bhaktisiddhanta's orders, and so Prabhupada wanted to make this point. So I was just going to read this. It's one paragraph, but it's very powerful to meditate on this, where we can discuss it. Let's see what the verse is. At first, all the followers of Advaita Acharya shared a single opinion, but later they followed two different opinions as ordained by Providence. Purport: the words Daivara Karana indicate that by dint of providence or by God's will, the followers of Advaita Acharya divided into two parties. Such disagreement among the disciples of one Acharya is also found among the members of the Gaudiya Math. In the beginning, during the presence of Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajak Acharya Ashtatara Shatashi Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, all the disciples worked in agreement. But just after his disappearance, they disagreed. One party strictly followed the instructions of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but another group created their own concoction about executing his desires. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, at the time of his departure, requested all his disciples to form a governing body and conduct missionary activities cooperatively. He did not instruct a particular man to become the next Acharya. But just after his passing away, the leading secretaries made plans without authority to occupy the post of Acharya, and they split into two factions over who the next Acharya would be. Well, there was actually a third faction of people who disagreed because they knew this wasn't right. So we had one party wanting to take over the movement, another party who didn't like that party saying, no, this person should be the next Acharya. And then you had other people disgusted with the whole thing who knew this was wrong, but now these two parties are fighting and the movement was cracking. So it's not that there weren't devotees who didn't understand this, but the devotees who were dividing were in very powerful positions. And it caused a lot of people to side with one side or the other, and then the sum and disgust just went away. So he did not instruct a particular man to become the next Acharya, but just after his passing, his leading secretaries made plans without authority to occupy the post of Acharya and split into two factions over who the next Acharya would be. Consequently, both factions were asara, or useless, because they had no authority, having disobeyed the order of the spiritual master. Despite the spiritual master's order to form a governing body and execute the missionary activities of the Gaudiya Math, the two unauthorized factions began litigation, and that is still going on after 40 years with no decision. Let me read, I just want to read the next paragraph. Therefore, we do not belong to any faction, but because the two parties busy dividing the material assets of the Gaudiya Math institution stopped the preaching work, we took up the mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Bhaktivinoda Thakur to preach the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all over the world under the protection of all the predecessor acharyas. That's a very important point. Why is Prabhupada saying that? He said, because we didn't fight, we didn't take sides, because we knew that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta did not appoint an acharya. So what was the mistake? Traditionally, an acharya will appoint a successor acharya. And traditionally, an acharya has his mat, an institution, and therefore he appoints his successor. And that successor will appoint their successor. It's one small institution, ashram, like that. Bhaktisiddhanta, he wanted to spread an international movement. And he didn't want one acharya. Acharya meaning one leader. Not that he didn't think they were qualified to make disciples or they weren't qualified to preach. He didn't see that one devotee was qualified to be the head of the institution. And he said, therefore, the head would be the GBC body. And if there were somebody that were qualified to be the spiritual head, and it wouldn't be the managerial head because he had the GBC. He said that would be obvious to everyone. That person would be self-effulgent and everyone would recognize it. There wouldn't be controversy. But Prabhupada said if he had seen somebody, he would have appointed. Or if he had wanted to appoint somebody, he would have, but he didn't. So Prabhupada said the mistake of Gaudiya Math was, as he explained here, is after Bhaktisiddhanta left, they thought, well, we need an acharya. So some of the devotees were saying so-and-so should be the acharya, and some were saying so-and-so should be the acharya, and then they fought over properties and so forth. And so in another purport, Prabhupada said, they got the properties, but they didn't get the power to preach. Their preaching wasn't successful. And now in the next paragraph, Prabhupada's saying his preaching was successful, and then he goes on to explain how Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary in Bhagavad Gita, says that it's the duty of the disciple to be totally dedicated to the order of the Guru. So Prabhupada goes on, I skipped down a little bit. So Prabhupada goes on to say, one must judge every action by its result. The members of the self-appointed Acharya's party who occupy the property of the Gaudiya Math are satisfied that they've got the property. And Prabhupada said, you get the property, people come, they give money, you can support yourself. And then Prabhupada said they were just making disciples who would go out and collect money and then have a temple, and they weren't really interested in preaching, and the purpose of the temple is for preaching. He said they're more interested in just creating the temple as a facility so they could support themselves and have some disciples and keep it simple. And he said that that's not what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted. So therefore, Prabhupada saying in the purport, so they were satisfied because they got the property, but they didn't get the power to preach because they didn't follow his order. So the power to preach was not in their qualification as renunciates or learned scholars. It was in the order. That's the point we're making. And the reason I'm making this point is because so many devotees have told me that they don't feel qualified by either material qualification or spiritual qualification to preach. And Prabhupada saying the qualification is in the execution of the order of the Guru. It's not in your material qualification. And these devotees, the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta, many of them were very, very qualified, very high birth, Brahminical family, very learned scholars, powerful preachers, powerful persons. And Prabhupada saying, look what happened to the Gaudiya Math. It was this powerful organization. After Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disappearance, because they disobeyed his order, the whole movement split. If they would have followed his order, it wouldn't have happened. Now, someone could say, maybe Krishna was doing that to teach us in ISKCON not to do that. Maybe Krishna wanted Prabhupada to preach independently because Prabhupada was trying to preach as a member of Gaudiya Math. When it came to a point where he just couldn't get any support from Gaudiya Math or his godbrothers, he had no choice. So he reluctantly started his own society, but he actually didn't want to. He wanted it to be Gaudiya Math preaching in the West. And my personal opinion is that if it were Gaudiya Math with that organization, it probably would have been really difficult for us as disciples because we would be hearing so many things. And occasionally, Prabhupada was criticized by his godbrothers. And we may have to hear that. You know, he shouldn't be called Prabhupada. They criticized him like that. He shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that. So how would that work? Hearing things about Prabhupada that we're saying he's not perfect, or perhaps different philosophical ideas. How would that work? From my perspective, I don't think it would have worked. So the fact that the Gaudiya Math didn't come and Prabhupada could do it alone, I think it was safer for us, at least in the beginning. Although he was trying to get them. But that's a side point. The point Prabhupada's making is these people are really qualified, but they disobeyed the order of their spiritual master, and they didn't get the power to preach. Even though they were intelligent and they could preach, the Shakti for the movement to spread was the order of the Guru. It wasn't one's own qualification. So Prabhupada says, the members of the self-appointed Acharya's party who occupy the property of the Gaudiya Math are satisfied, but they could make no progress in preaching. Therefore, by the result of their actions, one should know that they are ashara, or useless, whereas the success of the ISKCON party, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which strictly follows Guru and Gauranga, is increasing daily all over the world. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted to print as many books as possible and distribute them all over the world. We have tried our best in this connection, and we're getting results beyond our expectations. So this is heavy criticism, and we shouldn't take it that we're better than Prabhupada's godbrothers. We shouldn't take it that they're bad or they're offensive. That's not what Prabhupada is trying to explain here. Prabhupada's trying to explain the power of the order of the Guru, how all success is within that order, because Prabhupada said, we've taken the order. He didn't say we're better. He didn't say we're more qualified. He said, we've taken that order, and as a result, we've been successful because of the order, not because of the qualification. And he's saying, you know, when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was here, Gaudiya Math was very successful. That means the preachers were capable, but because they disobeyed the order, they became useless. So that's I mean, just think of that. That's really amazing to meditate. You have qualified people that become useless because they deviate from the order of the Guru, and something so important, so central, as creating a governing body, which I guess to them at that point seemed like maybe it was just a detail and really wasn't practical or not the way things have been done, and so we need to be smarter than our Guru and establish an Acharya. And so sometimes Prabhupada said, don't be over-intelligent, and by that Prabhupada meant, don't be so smart. You're so smart that you can disobey the order of your Guru. That's how smart you are. So you're over-intelligent. Just be intelligent enough to understand what your Guru is saying and follow him. And then you become over-intelligent. You become so smart that you know more than your Guru, that you can decide, actually we don't need a GBC, but we need is an Acharya. And then the other party says, yeah, that's right, but not your Acharya. We have a better Acharya. And so then they fight and the whole thing falls apart, simply because they didn't follow this one Guru's instruction. And maybe it didn't seem like a big instruction, but their whole organization was resting on following that instruction. Because they didn't follow it, they didn't realize it was important, it crashed. There's a story I've told before, and I think in the context of this discussion it's significant. This sannyasi wanted to do Ganga Parikrama, which means he would do a parikrama of the whole Ganga, which I don't know how long that would take, a year or two. And Bhaktisiddhanta Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was a preacher, so he didn't see value in doing that. That was more for this person's purification. And in so many ways, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta wanted to send out the troops, and he emphasized preaching. So this was not really part of his plan that the disciple would do Ganga Parikrama. But there are certain kinds of disciples that have a penchant for austerity and adventure, and who felt this was important. So even though Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said don't do it, inconceivably, I don't know how he said don't do it. He might have said, better you don't do it, I wouldn't advise it, it's not required. I don't know if it was a definite don't do it, because he did it. So maybe the instruction, maybe the way Srila Bhaktisiddhanta gave the instruction, it sounded like, well, it's better not to, but you can. But whatever the case, he gave the instruction not to do it in so many words, and that disciple did it. He was a sannyasi. And when that disciple finished Ganga Parikrama, he came back to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and told him, I just finished Ganga Parikrama, which is a big austerity. And then Bhaktisiddhanta took away his sannyas for disobeying his order. So the point is, you may do something which is good, or austere, or purifying, or whatever you want to call it, whatever positive word you want to give to it. But if it's not what your guru wants you to do, then it's bad, it's wrong. No matter how good it is, no matter how right it is, it's bad and it's wrong. And we told this other story, which is very significant as well. Shrutakirti was serving Prabhupada. He was his personal servant. That means he needed to be with Prabhupada to take care of all Prabhupada's personal needs whenever Prabhupada needed them. It was a 24-hour-a-day job. And so Shrutakirti tells the story that when he would see the book distributors coming back from Sankirtan and how blissful they were and energized and excited, he got a taste, and he asked Prabhupada, can I go out and distribute books? I'm getting inspired by these book distributors. I want to go out. Prabhupada said, you can go out, but without my blessings. So what did Prabhupada mean? It means your service is to stay here and serve me. So if you go out, yes, that's service, but it's not the service I want you to do. Therefore, even though you get so much mercy from book distribution, you won't get any mercy. Actually, your book distribution will be guru aparad. It will be somewhat of an offense to your guru. So the point is, it's not just that you do something and you get the mercy of the guru. If the guru doesn't want you to do that, even though the activity is Krishna conscious, there's no mercy within it. So you could do Ganga Parikrama, you could do book distribution, you could do so many, or you could become guru to save the world. But if your spiritual master doesn't want you to become guru, then you don't. Early on in the movement, one disciple was asking about becoming guru. And Prabhupada said, yes, that is there for the future. He said, but now you're not ready, so don't think about it. And if you try to do it now, it'll be suicidal. So Prabhupada said so many times he wants his disciples to become guru, but he didn't want them to become guru before they were ready, and he didn't want them to become guru in his presence. So if I say, oh, Prabhupada said become guru, and I become guru in his presence, that would be a big offense. And of course, some people think we're making a big offense by becoming guru after Prabhupada departs. That's their confusion, that's their misunderstanding of Guru Tattva. But Prabhupada had said so many times, I want you to become guru. So, not just guru, but actually do it properly, actually represent Prabhupada, and not some bogus guru. So the point is that if you're hesitating because you think, well, I'm not really qualified, the point Prabhupada's making is it's not really that we'll ever really be qualified. But the qualification is the order of the guru, and the power is in that order. And if I can follow that order, there's Shakti there. And I'll be able to make people Krishna conscious, and I'll be able to spread Krishna consciousness, and I'll be able to be Krishna conscious. Because the other side of this, I think, which is more common that I run up against all the time, is devotees saying, I'm not that Krishna conscious, or I don't feel I can be that Krishna conscious, or I have anarthas that I feel is just holding on to me. And that's true, but it's as we said yesterday, it's not simply by your own endeavor that you're going to overcome them. You have mercy of Guru, which is way more powerful than any of your anarthas. You know, I think one of the things we're conditioned by is this karma mimamsa idea, because karma mimamsa philosophy is basically saying that if you make certain efforts, you'll get certain results. So the results are guaranteed by your efforts. So if you think that way, you run into a couple of problems. The obvious problem is Krishna's not in the equation. Krishna's mercy, Guru's mercy is not in the equation. It's just your effort and karmic consequence. These are the consequences to your efforts. So okay, that puts Krishna out of the picture, so that's one problem. And the other problem is that what if you can't make the efforts? What if you say, I can only do X, I can only do so much? So according to that philosophy, you are restricted in terms of the results you can get because you can only do so much. But if you add Guru's mercy, then maybe you can only do so much, but you have prayer, you have endeavor, and Guru can reciprocate with your endeavor and make things happen that would ordinarily be impossible. So the equation changes. So when you add the element of mercy, it's a different equation. And therefore, sometimes it's not that we're capable of doing anything wonderful, but we're only capable of making the effort. And then Krishna and Guru see the effort, and then they make up the difference. So that we can achieve more Krishna consciousness than maybe we think we're capable of, because there's this element of mercy. And when the element of mercy comes in, we can get strength that we didn't have, we can get realization we didn't have, and we can get a change in attitude and a change of heart that's required to overcome anarthas, that on our own we may not be able to enact. So if we just think, it's just me with my limitations, and I look at my limitations, and therefore I kind of define how Krishna conscious I'm going to be based on my limitation, then we're not understanding that the mercy of the Guru makes up this huge difference. And there's so many shlokas like Bukam Karoti Vachalam. I can speak poetry, even I'm dumb. I can't even speak, but I can speak poetry by the mercy of the Guru. Mukam Karoti Vach Pangu Langayati Karim. I can cross mountains, even though I can't walk. I'm lame. Pangulayate Girim Yakripa. Yeah. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangulangaayate Girim Yakripa. Yeah. And there's another verse. I can see Taragane, I can see all these stars in the sky even though I'm blind. And that's all possible by the mercy of the Guru. So the point that these verses make, and there are other verses like that, is that my willingness to serve the order of my Guru, my willingness to be chaste to the order of my Guru, which means chaste to Srila Prabhupada's desires, chaste to Srila Prabhupada's mission, chaste to Srila Prabhupada's philosophy, chaste to my Guru's instructions, my authority's instructions. There's power in that, and that power can give us realization and strength, which we could never get just by our own effort. So I'm saying this because I think it's unfortunate if we limit ourselves in terms of the spiritual, how much spiritual advancement we can make or what we can achieve, simply based on our own perhaps lack of desire or lack of qualification. Whereas mercy of Guru is mercy of Mahaprabhu. It can do anything. It's said difficult things can become easy by his mercy. So yeah, being Krishna consciousness is difficult, but it can be made easy. So I'm not saying you're going to go from 0 to 100 overnight, and you're going to have prema tonight, or immediately after this lecture, you'll have prema. But you will be able to overcome a lot of anarthas and a lot of resistance when you understand it's not just you that's fighting, but it's Guru and Krishna behind you. If you're abiding by their instructions, and you have faith in those instructions, then who knows what can happen? Who knows what kind of realizations you can get? I mean, what's the limit? It's simply up to their mercy. That mercy can do it all, right? Potentially, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but potentially within the mercy of the holy name, Krishna is there. I mean, he's there. We know that. It's just we haven't It hasn't been revealed because our chanting is not pure enough. But Krishna's there. His leelas are there in his name. You could see those leelas potentially. If that mercy gate were open, then when you chant, you would see the leelas because the leelas are there. We're not uncovering it yet. But it's there. And so it's just we're praying for Prabhupada's mercy all the time. We're praying for Guru's mercy all the time, so that my just resistance to surrender and my resistance in general can be overcome. So that's the idea. And Bala means strength. So Balaram represents the strength of Guru Tattva. There's another nice story. You may remember that in Naimisharanya, there was Balaram showed up, and Ramarsan Sutta was reciting Bhagavatam, and he didn't stand up when Balaram came. And Balaram became very upset, and Balaram took a blade of grass and poked him and killed him. And so now what to do? They've gathered together here the Bhagavatam, so they said, well, let Sutta Goswami, let him speak. He's the son of Ramarsan Sutta, right? So Balaram said, I could bring Ramarsan Sutta back to life. They said, no. Empower Sri Sutta Goswami. You have Sukadev Goswami, Sutta Goswami. So Sutta Goswami was speaking here in Bhagavatam. They said, empower him. So Balaram put his hand on his head. And then what happened? All the Shastra manifested in his heart. That's amazing, isn't it? He put his hand on the head of Sri Sutta Goswami. All the Shastra manifested in his heart. You know, you're not going to understand Siddhanta just by reading. Krishna has to reveal what is the conclusion. I mean, you could come up with so many strange ideas by reading Prabhupada's books. And here, Balaram, by touching the head of Sutta Goswami, he hasn't read anything, and it's all revealed. So that says a lot. So that could happen. Would it happen to us? We can't say it will happen, but does it happen? It happens a little bit. Every time we're reading, every time we're serving, we're getting some mercy. So this is happening in small degrees. Could it happen in larger degrees? It could. We can't say it couldn't. But this is just a wonderful example of how the Guru reveals the tattva from within the heart of the sincere disciple. So the sincere disciple will never be misguided. So we always keep coming back to this point. If we're just sincere, Krishna will reveal to us. We'll have mercy. Krishna will reveal to us what is Siddhanta, what is right, where my anarthas lie, and so forth. Yeah. I mean, there's other things we could say about Balaram. There's so many nice things, but I think it would take us off track a little bit. And so I'm going to look at your questions, and then if there's time after we answer your questions, we can go back and speak a little more about Balaram. I just have to retrace my steps to find where the questions start. Okay. Okay, everyone, give me 1 second. Excuse me for... Sometimes, so Radhapriya says, sometimes it's difficult to follow the instruction because my false ego told me that I'm right and you're a mistake, and now I know you have a better vision of my future. I already fell and heard it. This is the reason I trust you. See, accepting Guru is a very interesting thing, and I can see from my perspective as a Guru, and also my perspective as a disciple, that it's really hard sometimes for people to accept the instruction of their Guru. But try to understand why it's hard. One of the main reasons it's hard is because the Guru will say something to restrict our sense gratification. He'll say, don't do this, this is not allowed. And we'll think, well, what's wrong with that? Everybody does it. Why can't I do this? And we can't understand why we can't do it because we want to do it. And that's why we can't understand a perfectly logical instruction. Don't do this, it's wrong. This is not part of our philosophy. This is not what we do. But you think, oh, your Guru Maharaj doesn't understand, or he's being fanatical or whatever. Yeah, that's our mistake. And so we don't follow, we make a mistake, we suffer. It's just how it goes. I mean, that's a general instruction. You know, sometimes the spiritual master gives many instructions. So, you know, there are many things you could do to follow because he's given, you know, alternatives. But specifically, if your guru is saying, don't do this or do this, and you reject it, or you're hesitant, it's not good. Because within the following the instruction, Krishna is pleased. There's mercy there. So Krishna is pleased. You followed your guru, so he's happy. You know, in theory, now this is controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway, and it might require some discussion. But in theory, let's say your guru gives you instruction, and it's not the best instruction for that situation. And later on he changes that instruction. And he says, I realize that we should do this, and I know I've told you we should do that, but I realize this is better. New instructions. Okay. But the fact that you followed that instruction that he gave you, even though he changed it, that means you got mercy. Now, if you really felt it was wrong and bad and detrimental and so on, you could go to your guru and say, I really think this is wrong for these reasons, and you could discuss it with him. But if you didn't have that opportunity and the instruction was just there and you were resistant to follow it, still you follow it, you get mercy, because that instruction was the instruction of your guru, so you follow it, you do it. In other words, there's mercy in the instruction. So we should always remember that. And so if we want Guru's mercy, it comes through his instruction. And if we don't follow the instruction, we may suffer. And I think for us as senior devotees, we've been given many instructions by Prabhupada that we've struggled to follow because they were difficult. Or, as you say, our false egos were resisting, or our desire for sense gratification was getting in the way. Or it just made us uncomfortable, or it was just difficult. But over the years, we've been able to follow, or at least follow more. And so we can testify that the result of following those instructions is that we're more Krishna conscious. We're more detached. We're more surrendered. So, and we'll look back in retrospect and we'll think, I was a fool to doubt that instruction, and I was a fool to resist following that instruction. It's as Prabhupada said, sometimes you just don't understand the instruction fully, but the instruction's there. And sometimes the instruction goes against your own sense of what's right or what would be most effective. But there's certain instructions that Prabhupada gave, and he just didn't budge on those instructions, no matter how we presented it. But Prabhupada, what about this and this and this? No, it's this. But Prabhupada, people say this and people feel this. No, it's this. So some instructions, not all, but some instructions Prabhupada was just very direct on. He wouldn't compromise. And to us, it didn't make sense. But there was the instruction, and we had to follow it. And years later, we realized why Prabhupada said this. And now we're dealing with devotees who are giving the same excuses that we used to give. The same doubts are there. It's material vision. We're seeing it materially, and Prabhupada's seeing it transcendentally. So, there have been discussions about this in terms of gurus giving instructions about relative subject matters, material matters, where they may not have absolute knowledge. And I've often said, if that's the case, then sometimes you may have to do what is most practical in the moment if you cannot consult with your guru. And if you can consult with your guru, you can present your doubts and say, I don't think this will work because the people in our country think this way, and if we do this, they'll react this way, and it'll hurt the preaching. And then he might say, okay, you made good points, I agree with you. So he may not have had all that knowledge. But there are many instructions the guru will give and say, this is wrong, don't do this. He'll be very direct. He won't say, I don't think this is right, but you can do what you want. He'll say, this is wrong and this is why you're suffering. And so If you want a spiritual master, it's not a formality and it's not a fashion. It's so that you can follow him, so you can be guided by his instructions. You will find that it's not always easy, but you will also find that the better you become at following those instructions, the more Krishna conscious you'll be. I mean, if you've just taken initiation, right, your spiritual master's probably at least 40 years older than you and almost 50 years in Krishna consciousness. So it would make sense he knows more. Radhapriya says, every person has his point of view, his or her point of view. If you give me an instruction, I can make the interpretation. How to know if Krishna is the right way to execute this order. Yeah, well, sometimes you won't know, because your point of view may not be informed by enough philosophy or enough experience or enough purification. And so, if you doubt it, then you can express it. Say, I don't think this is right because of this and this and this. And so, let your spiritual master hear it. You can have a discussion. But then after the discussion, if he says, you're making a mistake, this is wrong, this will not be good for your spiritual life, and you disobey that, then I will tell you a story. And a lot of devotees know this story. And a lot of gurus apply this principle to instructing their disciples. A devotee wanted to remarry, and Prabhupada allowed him to, and Srutakirti said, why did you allow that, Prabhupada? You always said that we shouldn't get divorced. And Prabhupada said, I could see that whatever I said, he was going to get married anyway. He just wanted my blessings. And so if I said no, and he married, which I know he will, then he'll be disobeying the order of my guru. So sometimes a guru may just back off because he doesn't want his disciple to disobey. Or he may see that the disciple needs to do something. So he may say, yeah, do as you like, because he knows the disciple is going to do as he or she likes anyway. So sometimes the guru is merciful in that way because he doesn't want the disciple to disobey the order. Because within that following of the order is the mercy, and it becomes an offense to disobey the order. But sometimes the guru will be very specific because he sees the disciple is headed for trouble, or the disciple is about to drink poison, and he'll say, no, don't do that, or yes, do this. He'll be very, very deliberate about it. And so when your guru is very deliberate about it, then pay attention. Because if you disobey, you'll suffer not only materially, most likely, but spiritually for not obeying the order, and then you become weak when you disobey the order of the guru. So, Prabhupada's happy if you follow your guru. Some people might say, well, yeah, but your guru is not, he's not Uttama Adhikari, he's not in prema. That may be, but Prabhupada is happy, Krishna's happy when you follow that guru, whoever he is. When you follow his instruction, you get mercy. So that's the whole point of this class, that there's mercy in the instruction. And with that mercy, you're going to be able to achieve things that you could never achieve on your own. So if you want to try to succeed by disobeying the order of your guru, it's not possible. You can't. You could get some material success. And some of Prabhupada's disciples have disobeyed him and they've gotten great material success, but they can't really make people Krishna conscious. That's Prabhupada's point. They don't have the Krishna Shakti. They have some material Shakti. They may be preaching spiritual knowledge and helping people in some way, but they're not able to make them pure devotees. They're not able to get people to surrender fully because they're not representing the guru and they don't have that Shakti. And so just through material facility, nice kirtan, nice speaking, nice writing, that doesn't fully represent Prabhupada, it's going to have limited effect. It's not going to have as much effect. It'll have some effect because people are hearing. But the source of that lacks power. And Krishna's not pleased with that person, so he'll only give him material success. I mean, there's so many religious organizations that are not preaching anything that's really going to help people evolve spiritually that much, and they're extremely successful. So, but it's material power, and therefore people are not really benefiting. So we don't want to expand Krishna consciousness on the basis of material power. We want to do it on the basis of spiritual power, because that will help people. So, Katrina says, to put full faith in Guru is very important, but what's even more important is to have the realization that your Guru wants the best for you. And it's his task to get you back to Godhead. Good point. That was a long one. Wow. But sometimes we tend to think, how can he, Guru, get to know me if I don't have his association on a daily basis? But he does get to know you from the bhakti side of yours, through inquiries and sadhana report. He gets to see your nature and your service. Helps you to enhance it to the highest potential of yours. The Guru he also knows all the struggles you're going to go through without knowing you, because these struggles everyone goes through. So he can address so many things about you just because you're a conditioned soul. Guru also gets to recognize the aspects you are not as advanced, and by his instructions he helps you improve them and enhance your abilities, not just your own benefit, but mainly for the benefit of ISKCON as a whole. And for us disciples or aspiring disciples, it's very important to realize this is not about us individually, but about the movement. Yes. Katrina has many realizations. She's only been a devotee 6 months. But she was very evolved before. I can tell that from hearing what she says. And she says, had an amazing message transmitted to me yesterday morning, the night before Denia Mataji, that serves at the manor in Watford, or is Denia, got initiated. Wow. And after the morning program, one Prabhu told her, now you've got a new father and a new mother. New father is Guru, new mother is Shastra. And that's who our Guru is, our spiritual father. Nice. Master Prada says, my heartfelt dhanavats, obeisances, Hare Krishna. Very interesting class. Let me read this. Interesting class in this down mood and confusions that some of us gets once in a while. Thank you. Can you have more than one teacher? Prabhupada said, unlimited Siksha Gurus, one Diksha Guru. Katrina says, no. Carla says, Carla's in Taipei. She's from, she is from, I wanted to say Guadalajara. And then I was going to say Guadalupe. What's the country? I forgot the name. The country below Mexico. It starts with a G. It's not Guadalupe. That's in the Caribbean. I can't remember. Anyway, we should know that our Guru knows what is best for us. Sometimes the instructions can be hard to follow or to accomplish, and sometimes we may not like them, but it is the same as taking medicine. We may not like it. Ladies and gentlemen, you know the most difficult instruction you're going to ever get from your Guru is when you fall in love with the wrong person and your Guru says, no, that's the wrong person. That'll be the hardest instruction for you to follow, if you could even follow it. Yeah, believe me. What is the difference between a healthy and unhealthy dependency towards Guru? Over the years I had a chance of observing devotees who seemed to be so devoted to Guru, being engaged in helping the mission. What's the long one? Helping the mission, it seemed that they had Guru's mercy but left Krishna consciousness anyway. Many are still my close friends, although they're not devotees any longer. Interesting thing is that when I asked some of them why they left and why don't they want to have anything to do with the Guru they seem to love, many of them are saying that they feel they did too much too quickly and they were not ready for that. So how to find balance? Well, I would say probably that was their tendency with everything they do. To do something too quick, too fast. Also, I think it's part of the culture of ISKCON to try to push people too much. And Prabhupada said, we shouldn't push people. We should pull people with knowledge. And they should push themselves. So, and then you could also say that perhaps if we knew what we knew then that we know now, or you were there knowing what you know now, you might have said, look back off. This dependency on your guru is actually your weakness. You're giving up your own individuality, your common sense. You're giving so much, and it's artificial. It's not real. It's not psychologically healthy what you're doing. It's a weakness, and you don't realize it. And so, could have given them some help. So, of course, we say you should depend on your guru. You should surrender to your guru. But it doesn't mean you should become mindless. It doesn't mean that you should become weak, because in surrendering and depending, the point you're making, I think, is that you could become weak because you become dependent. And so dependency can be a strength and it can be a weakness. So it becomes a weakness when you can't function without getting so much affection from your guru and so many positive reinforcements and so forth. So you become dependent on something that is not really what the guru gives, because the guru, you should be dependent on the instruction of the guru. And I would say they probably weren't dependent on the instruction. They were probably more dependent on the physical presence of the guru, or more dependent on the approval of the guru. And that was probably a need they had. And so they were ideal candidates for this kind of weak dependency. We're supposed to be dependent on the instruction. That's our life and soul. And that's where we see the love of the guru coming through his instruction. So if you see it that way, then that's a healthy dependency. Sometimes when someone leaves Krishna consciousness, one of the comments could be made is that they never were Krishna conscious. It was like they never understood it. And it was a sentiment. And the sentiment didn't have any grounding in Krishna conscious practice or philosophy. They weren't doing the practice well. Maybe they were doing it because they didn't have a love of a father, and their guru was their father, and now they have love of a father. Maybe that's why they did it. And so they never actually grasped Krishna consciousness, because if someone grasps Krishna consciousness, it's extremely rare they would give it up completely. They might give it up temporarily just because they fall into Maya, but they would never give it up philosophically. So to just give it up totally philosophically, it's like, hello, did you actually ever understand this? Or was this just a phase you were going through? I would have tried to help them if I saw them in that situation, to understand what Krishna consciousness is and understand what attachment to Guru is. And are you having emotional needs being fulfilled through this service, and are you having expectations being met that cannot be steadily met? Then you're just approaching it in a very unhealthy way. That's what's going to backfire eventually. Can you have more than one teacher? You can have one Diksha Guru and as many Siksha Gurus as you need. So, Madhapriya says, that's true. You saw two wrong people in my life. And only Krishna knows what happened if I didn't hear you. But you have ways to learn, like children accept. Yeah. So I told her what to do. If she doesn't do it, and she suffers, and she realizes, oh, I should have listened. Hard way to learn. All these lectures on guru-disciple relationship are the heaviest to digest, because it makes us realize how much our own ego and pride stays in the way of our advancement. Yeah. So you see, we all want to be independent, just to do whatever we want, think in any way we want. And anytime we want, we just want to act according to how we feel. That's why we're conditioned. So you have a guru may come and say, no, that's wrong. And everything we thought about we felt was right, he's telling us is wrong. So that's hard. And so to be a disciple means to give up some independence in how we're going to think and how we're going to feel. Of course, you can't control how you feel, but to determine which feelings are advantageous and which ones are not, or which feelings are aligned with how a devotee should be feeling, believing, thinking, and so forth. So it is a challenge. It's a challenge even for senior devotees, because we all want independence. So a lot of people are very anxious, I want to have a guru, I want to be initiated. And a lot of times I think they don't really understand that having a guru means you're not completely independent, just to do whatever you want, however you want. We have shastras. We have sadhus, and the guru is presenting those instructions. And we may be wrong in our thinking often. And, there are consequences to our thinking. So that's important to recognize and to think about. It's not, who wants to give up their independence? Nobody wants to give up independence. And to have a guru means you can't just do whatever you want. Look at Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna is telling Krishna, this is what I want to do. And Krishna's saying, no, you can't do that. That's wrong. And Arjuna's saying, no, but look at all the reasons. This is not wrong. I have good reasons. And Krishna's saying, your reasons are bogus. And Arjuna's having a really hard time because all his reasons are good. They're all valid. His reasons could be backed up with Shastra. I mean, look at it, Our reasons are usually just whimsical. Well, I don't want to do this because I don't feel like it. But Arjuna's reasons are not whimsical. Arjuna's reasons are shastric. He's going to, because of this reason and this principle of etiquette and this niti and this morality and this logic. And Krishna's saying, whatever. In this situation, none of this applies. So I'm telling you what to do. And what is Krishna telling him to do? Kill your relatives. And it's like, does that make sense? My guru tells me to kill my relatives. Does that make sense? Of course it doesn't make sense. So Arjuna's being challenged to give up common sense. He's being challenged that whatever he's feeling, whatever emotions going through his system, his heart, whatever he's understanding of Shastra, Krishna's saying, forget it, it's wrong. You are wrong, and you are going to suffer if you do this. So we're not going through stuff that's that deep. Our guru is just saying, this is the wrong guy to marry. This is the wrong girl to marry, And we're so attached that we say, Guru Maharaj, I can't give this up. Yeah, all right. So now you're not following the order of your guru. Okay, so what's going to happen to your spiritual life? Not a good thing. Krishna's not happy. It's not like your guru is going to curse you. But Krishna knows what you're doing. So you want to get more mercy, you have to follow. And that's why it's hard to be a disciple, because sometimes we have to put aside everything that we believe is right. And we have to put aside what we're feeling about a situation. And we read or we hear from our Guru, and our Guru Maharaj says this. Yesterday, I think I was reading something that Prabhupada said. It was one of those hard to digest things. But he said it so many times, you can't turn your back to it. Like if Prabhupada says something once, you might say, yeah, well, that was contextual. It was this situation. He never said it again. In fact, he said other things in other situations. So you could rationalize that I don't have to follow that instruction because it was circumstantial, and subsequently Prabhupada didn't say that anymore. But here I'm reading something, and Prabhupada's saying it over and over again in various situations over the years. It was from 1968 to 1977. He's saying the same thing. And it was hard for me to accept, and you can't deny it. He just said it. So as a good disciple, we just have to say, this is what Prabhupada said, therefore this is how it is. You can't take it any other way. And if you do, it's like then, as Prabhupada's saying in that purport, you become useless to one degree or another. It's just the power. How do you have the power to represent the disciplic succession if you don't represent it? If you have your own idea, if you have your own opinion. So you look at Bhagavad Gita, how does it evolve? It finally evolves to the end where Arjuna says, okay, I'm prepared to do whatever you've told me. And now Arjuna's successful, he wins the battle. Why? Because he did what Krishna wanted. So, the Bhagavad Gita kind of in a sense is just the story of what we're talking about, of either you're going to be useful or useless according to you follow your own whims or you follow Krishna's instruction. So that's what Arjuna did. So Arjuna's our example. He exemplifies us. A million excuses. Our excuses aren't as good as Arjuna's. His were shastric. Ours are quite whimsical, just based on our feelings and desires. And then finally, Krishna convinces Arjuna that you will do better if you surrender to me. And so what's the message in there? The message in there was what Krishna told Arjuna in the beginning. He said, look at all your arguments. Yeah, they're really good arguments, aren't they? You're sitting here completely depressed, completely confused and frustrated. So what's the use of your arguments? So it's like we're making arguments. It's so stupid. We're making arguments. Where have our arguments gotten us? They've gotten us body after body after body. You're like, well, I don't know if I can really follow the instruction of my guru. It's so heavy. I don't feel this. It's like, hello, stupid. You've been following your mind for millions of lives, and all it's got you is millions of bodies. And now you have a bona fide guru. Just follow him. He'll get you out of this mess. You can't get out of this mess on your own. And you're in this mess because you think you think you're smart. Yeah, you're so smart that you got another material body. So that's really the underlying, subtle message that Krishna is telling Arjuna. I mean, without saying it in so many words, it's like, basically, look at Arjuna, look at where you've gotten by your so-called logic and your feeling, I don't want to fight, I want to be a Brahmin. Look at where it's gotten you. It's gotten you into depression. It's gotten into you to this point where you're apathetic. You can't even you're the greatest fighter in the world, and you can't even fight now. Look at where your philosophy has gotten you to. And so Krishna educates him, he surrenders to Krishna's instructions, and then he fights, and he wins the battle. So, what a good example we have in Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? It's like, here's resistance personified, Arjuna, and he finally surrenders, and look what he does. And the Bhagavad Gita ends, it sums up the whole thing. Where there's Krishna and Arjuna, there's going to be victory, there's going to be opulence, there's going to be morality. Of course, as long as Arjuna follows Krishna. So, wherever there's you and Krishna, there'll be victory, morality, and opulence. Wherever you minus you and Krishna, then you know what you have. You have you, as you are now. You like the way you are now? With all your gunk and junk inside you, you like that? Well, that's what you've created without Guru through all those lifetimes. You want to keep creating that? Fine. Don't follow Guru. But if you follow Guru and Krishna, then you can create what Arjuna created. Victory, opulence, morality. That's the message. It's so interesting to put it in that context, isn't it? And then we have this purport of Prabhupada saying these powerful sannyasis became useless and his grihastha disciples spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. I mean, what kind of statement is that? What does that say? That says it all, right there. It says everything. Some hippies, a year after giving up LSD, marijuana, and illicit sex, rock and roll, go to London, and the whole Krishna conscious movement expands into what it is today. And it keeps expanding. Whereas his godbrothers couldn't do it. What does that say? It says the power of following the Guru. It doesn't matter who you are. You just follow sincerely. You're empowered. Okay, so we have some more comments. I just have to go back to the last comment. Can someone who doesn't follow the instructions of their guru, end up expelled from ISKCON? It depends what they do. No, I mean, even the best disciples don't always follow perfectly all the instructions that your guru. Prabhupada said we should get up every day at 4 o'clock. I didn't follow that instruction this morning. This morning I got up at 5 because I didn't get enough rest yesterday, and so and I was up a little late last night. So I didn't perfectly follow that instruction. Should I be expelled from ISKCON? I'm sure I have disciples that got up at 4, and I got up at 5, and they're doing better than me, so we should expel me. Yeah, and if you don't get up at 4 every day, we should expel you. No, it's not like that. You're not going to get expelled from ISKCON. But it's just that the more you follow, the more mercy is there. The more you'll advance. So it's just the instructions are there, take advantage. If you don't fully take advantage, work on taking advantage. Through your life, become more purified so you can take more advantage of more instruction. So as you advance, there's like look at all the instructions as just potential mercy for you. And then the more you advance, the more you can take advantage of those instructions, which means the more mercy you get. That's how to look at it. Radhika says, how to understand when Guru may revert from specific instructions and it might seem Guru encourages independence. How does that align with surrender? If Guru is encouraging independence, he's encouraging you to use your intelligence rather than be artificially dependent, so you're not using your dependence, so you're not self-reliant. So this dependence, interdependence, independence, that was given by Stephen Covey. Yeah, I should be dependent, but I should be independent. It's like Prabhupada said, when you approach your Guru, you should feel yourself as a fool, but don't act as a fool. So I feel myself a fool, that means I don't know anything. Now my Guru is giving me knowledge, that means I know something, so I shouldn't act like a fool now. So I come dependent, he gives me knowledge, now I can independently apply that knowledge and execute it. So there's a letter Prabhupada said, I want my disciples to be independently thoughtful in all affairs of Krishna consciousness. So how can you be independently thoughtful? You totally depend on your Guru. He gives you the instruction, you take that instruction, you go out and apply it. That's your independence. So your independence is really interdependence, because you're never entirely independent. You're always dependent, but with that power you go out and spread Krishna. Okay, go out and do it. So now I'm on my own, I'm doing it. Not really on my own because I have the instruction. But my Guru says, make decisions, pray to Krishna. Krishna will guide you, use your intelligence. So many times Prabhupada said, be sincere and Krishna will guide you. It's not that he wanted us to ask him a million questions about every little detail. He wanted us to be sincere enough that Krishna would guide us. And so Prabhupada said, you have Guru within and Guru without, and the Guru without is trying to help you connect with the Guru within who will give you the intelligence so you can act. So there's a balance there. If you become too independent, it's going to not be good. And if you become too dependent in an unhealthy way, it's not going to be good, because then you won't use your independence. So I can use my independence because I know I'm always dependent on Krishna. But I'm not so dependent that I can't do anything. I can't think. That's not what Prabhupada was training us to be like. So Erica says, I called Erica Namarasa. When that was a hope that she would get a taste for the holy name, and I hope that taste is developing. When you have Guru and your husband who isn't a devotee, and the opinions goes different, how to act, whom to follow, Guru or husband, you have to follow both of them. Yeah, that's like Prabhupada saying all the men should be single and all the women should get married. And so they said, Prabhupada, how to do that? And Prabhupada just laughed. He said, that requires management. So I think that's the answer to your question. That requires management. If you create disruption in your family, it'll disrupt your spiritual life. If you don't establish boundaries within your family, then you have no boundaries to follow your spiritual practice. So it's a balance. Family life is a compromise to some degree or another. And then so if we accept there will be compromises, it's easier to deal with it, because you'll see all these compromises, then you'll think, oh, I don't want to compromise, this is bad, oh no, I don't like this. But then if you accept, well, family life will be compromises, but most people need to be married, it's stability, so you need that stability, and you need a father for your children. So there will be compromises, there's a price to pay. But you want to create boundaries also, so that your family knows that I will give you my time in all these areas, but I need you to give me time in these areas so I can maintain my Krishna consciousness. So you just make the best use of the particular situation that you're in. And everyone has this situation, Erica. It's just just some have it to less extremes. So even if your husband's a devotee, there may, maybe he doesn't get up in the morning and you want him to get up and chant with you, but he doesn't. So that's just the way it is. Or he gets up early, but he doesn't want to chant with you. Or whatever the situation may be. So, it's never really ideal. So you have to make adjustments. And when you accept the reality, I mean, this is a big thing. We're developing a more, I think, a strategic, logical presentation of the forgiveness workshop. And in thinking of it, of how to approach forgiveness, I came up with this idea: face it, feel it, deal with it, and execute it. Which is, this is like in your situation, face it. This is a reality. You just have to face it. You can't try to make it something it isn't. This is just how it is. So you face it as it is. You accept it as it is. And then you feel it, and you don't want to really feel it because you don't like the way it feels. It's like you'll look at it and you'll be depressed. No, but you have to feel it as part of feel it is an aspect of facing it as it is. And then you deal with it. Okay, so now you can deal with it in acknowledgement that this is how it is. It's like, let's say you're in debt, right? But you don't acknowledge it. So you go on spending, buying this, and this is the way you've always lived. You've always had whatever you wanted. But you just have to stop and say, wait a minute, I don't have this kind of money anymore. And you got to feel like depressed. You feel like a loser. But you have to go through that process so you can accept the reality that I have to budget myself to my income, and my income is not what it used to be. And it's a very common thing. People spend more money than they make. So you have to accept the reality of your family situation and then just deal with it in the best way you can to be Krishna conscious. And you can apply that to any situation. We're on the way of purification, so although we have Guru, we're not always ready to follow our Guru's instructions. How to process it? I mean, how to be encouraged, not being discouraged. Being able to follow it completely. The idea is, if I can't follow it, I should be regretful that I can't follow it, and I should be desirous of following it and praying and hoping someday I can follow this better. I know Guru Maharaj, I know Srila Prabhupada, I don't follow all these instructions perfectly. Maybe there's rationale to it, in my state and my level. This is the best I can do, and I'm doing this because I think this is going to be the best way I can serve you now. But I know I can do better, and I want to do better, and I want to follow everything you've taught me, and I'm working towards that. So the real point is that Prabhupada makes in the Gita, it says, you may not be able to follow it, but you should not be resistant to it. You accepting it. Say, okay, this is the ideal, I accept it. But I can't follow it now for whatever reason, but I want to follow it. And so Prabhupada said, then you're okay. It's an ideal, and then you work towards that ideal. The problem is if you rationalize the idea. No, in this situation, not really, shouldn't be followed, it's fanatical, it's too much, You rationalize away an instruction that is meant to be followed. Then you're in trouble. Then you lose the mercy of that instruction because you rationalize the instruction away. Now you can't get the mercy of following that instruction. That's unfortunate because there's mercy in every instruction. In some instructions, there's more mercy. So if you rationalize away an instruction, you just lost the mercy of being able to follow that instruction. Even you get mercy, at least I believe, based on what Prabhupada said, that success in Krishna consciousness is just the effort. That's the success, not necessarily the realization. So the effort to follow the instruction, even if you fail, is a kind of success. So if I rationalize the instruction or in some way feel I don't have to follow it, then you've lost the mercy of that instruction. And if you try to follow it and fail, at least you try to follow. And there's mercy there. Yes? Without following Guru, we're just another conditioned soul. If we follow our Guru, we are a conditioned soul with a purpose. Yeah. You are a conditioned soul being reconditioned, unconditioned, deconditioned. I think Bhaktivinoda Thakur uses the word unconditioned. Yeah. Someday we'll be an unconditioned soul. Yeah. So, we are all conditioned souls. We're not better than anybody else out there. Don't think because you're a devotee you're better. What's better is that you have mercy and you in the instructions of Guru and Krishna, and you can follow those instructions, and those instructions will make you better. But in and of ourselves, it's not like we're more sense-controlled than everyone, or we're more peaceful than everyone, or even happier than everyone, or we have a better attitude than everyone. There's a lot of people that are just, by nature, optimistic, happy, enthusiastic, determined, sense-controlled, maybe more than us. But what will make what distinguishes us, what will make the difference is that we have the instructions. So we follow those instructions, we become super special. Radhika says this heavy flow is amazing. You know what the most amazing thing is? It's actually not heavy. What is heavy is not following the order of the Guru. What is heavy? We think surrender is heavy. No, what's actually heavy is not surrendering. What's actually heavy is not avoiding the instructions of the Guru. Surrender is sweet, following instruction is sweet, austerity is sweet, is all sweet. And we have it backwards. We think, this is so heavy. And Prabhupada's, Prabhupada's telling me to do this, it's so heavy. Yeah, but once you do it, you'll come back at the end of the day and say, that was an amazing day. I was so afraid to do this. It was so hard, but I did it. And I was so ecstatic. And it was just amazing. So that's such an important point. And I'm glad you brought this up because it's a great way to end the class. And isn't this our experience? Isn't this our realization? It's the resistance that causes the suffering. It's the lack of following. It's not that the instruction is heavy per se. What's heavy is our resistance to it. And our unhappiness is created by resisting. Our unhappiness is not created by following it. Surrender, it's so difficult. No, it's not difficult. We may be resisting surrender, but if you actually do it, it's not difficult. It's blissful. It's wonderful. Life becomes difficult when we don't surrender. That's the point. So, yes, that's the point. Again, there's nothing else to say because it's clear and you understand it. And yeah, that's the point. Sonal says, you mentioned about overdependence on Guru's approval. How do we know to get approval for it if it was not? How do we know what to get approval for or not? That Krishna will reveal to you. But I would say, before you want approval, try to understand the instruction and use your intelligence. And then if you're still confused, you can ask. Or you can ask a senior devotee. Even senior devotees are sometimes confused. A lot of times you discuss it with other devotees. I'm thinking this, I'm thinking that. These are my reasons for the pros. These are my reasons for the cons. What do you think? Should I do this? Shouldn't I do that? Is this the right understanding of Shastra? Am I applying this properly? Am I misunderstanding? So, that's natural. It's going to be there until we're completely purified. Sometimes that will be that. You won't know everything. Sometimes it'll be clear. You'll say, this instruction is clear. I don't need approval. But I may not know, and I may first want to discuss with other devotees, and if I'm not clear, I can ask my Guru. So, I think the main thing is that as we advance, we'll be more clear about what is proper. And Prabhupada wants us to become advanced, so we know how to act. And he wants us to be sincere, so Krishna will guide us. So, that's there. Okay. In my example, feel it, face it, deal with it, do it, something like that. Deal with it means okay, we're going to start to deal with it. Feel it, face it, do it. Feel it, face it, deal with it, do it. That's another t-shirt. I may rewrite it a little bit, but I'm developing some strategies for teaching forgiveness, and I'm coming up with these ideas, these more graphic ideas. Feel it, face it, do it. Feel it, face it, do it. And what was the last one? What did I say? Feel it, face it, Well, God, my memory. That's what happens when you don't sleep enough. Feel it, face it, do it. What was the other one? Somebody tell me, what did I just say? Oh my God, I'm glad you heard that. Tell me what I just said. Well, but in between those, feel it. Face it. What happens before facing it? Resistance. What happens before feeling it? Resistance. What happens? Oh, feel it, face it, deal with it. Feel it, face it, deal with it, do it. So then what happens before deal with it means like, okay, we're going to have to do something. What am I going to do? And then do it. I'm going to have to actually do it. And in between each stage is resistance. I need to write that down because, sometimes I say things and I don't remember. And I've said this before. I actually have it in a book, but it's not actually like this. But this is the formula, and resistance is in between each one of these. And everything you deal with, feel it, face it, deal with it, do it. Yeah, everything that you're resistant to deal with is because face it comes first. Face it means just accept it as it is. Face it. Oh yeah, face it's first. I'm sorry, face it is first. And face is accept it as it is. We're going to make a chart. I'm going to send it to Priya. Accept it as it is. This can be a great chart. We kind of did this in the seminar at the Manor. I made this formula. So it's just like, this is how it is. Because a lot of times we think it like that person's spending money. It's not facing the fact that you don't have all this money you're spending. And a lot of people do that. Their income goes down, or they're going into debt. They're not facing the fact that they don't have all this money. Or, the situation's not that bad. You have some bad relationship. No, it is bad. Or, my job is not that bad. No, it is bad. Or, my marriage is not that bad. No, it is bad. You're just not facing it. Right? So to face it means to sum it up, accept it as it is, sum it up. This is how it is. It's basically being real about it. So there's a resistance to do that. False ego gets in the way. No, I'm not that bad, Yeah, you are that bad. Just accept it. And then feel it, that's even harder. Now I have to feel bad you have to feel how bad I feel about how bad I am. Oh my God, but if you don't do that, you can't work to the next stage. And then the next stage is, okay, what's the solution? That's not just such a hard stage to do. That's kind of a blissful stage. But the next stage, doing it, there'll be resistance. There may not be so much resistance coming up with a solution, because solutions are pretty positive. So the only way out is through it. Yeah, that's in the feel it. The only way out is through it. Which means you have to feel it to go through it. Yeah. So that's very important. That's one. If you're resisting anything, just apply that formula. Just assess it. What is it that I'm resisting? That I'm not good at this, or I mistreat devotees, or I always fail with this, or my rounds have been bad for 48 years, or I only have one friend devotee who's kind of a friend. What is it about me that I need to work on it? I just have to assess it as it is. Just state it as it is. That's the face it. Face it is just state it as it is. It's just, what is it? And then, how does that feel? Well, that feels horrible. Well, feel it. Because the emotion comes up, and you feel it. It enables you to work through it, because you don't have to suppress the emotion, because it's, you know what I'm saying? When you feel it, when you feel, then you can work, then when you feel it, you can You can be enabled to work on it because you don't have to suppress it anymore, because we're suppressing because we don't want to feel it. Does that make sense? I may have to play back this lecture and just listen to it myself and I'm taking notes on what I'm saying. That's weird right now. Krishna's speaking through me. So, and then once okay, you felt it, so you don't have to resist it anymore because you've got the feeling out and the emotions come out and you feel relieved. And now you can start to think about the solutions, which is where it gets really positive. And then the resistance will come in because now you have to execute it, and that could be difficult. So anything you're dealing with, that's the process. And if you apply this process, you'll see it's amazing. It's just my experience. I didn't read it in a book. I learned a little bit about it, and this is how, when you start this process, it could be really slow. It could take you like a year just to admit it. It could. Or 10 years, or it could take you 1 second. But my experience is once you get good at doing this, then you'll do it very fast because you realize this is how to get through the problem. And if you see a problem, you're like, okay, what is it? Let's face it. So your wife is saying you have a problem. You're like, yeah, tell me about it. Whereas before, it's like resistance. I don't want to hear about it. Ego is denying it. So you realize that you can go through these 4 stages very quickly if you just drop the resistance, and you can solve problems very quickly. So once you start doing it, it becomes very easy. And you're not all mental about, oh, I'm bad at this, I'm bad at that. That's fine. Just acknowledge it so you can get better at it. And so you're like, okay, tell me how I'm bad at it. Well, you do this and that and that. And you go, okay, that feels horrible. I feel like a failure or whatever. Just allow myself to feel it, go through it. Okay, so what are we going to do? Now you're ready for the solution. Okay, what are we going to do? And say, well, I should stop doing this and doing that, and I should read this book and train this way. And it said, oh, that's great, I have a plan. And then you look at the stage of deal with it. That's the plan. And then also the results. When you make the plan, you look at the results, how it's going to be. And that gets exciting. You get excited by results. Right? You go, oh, if I do this, I'm going to get this result. And then so you get more encouragement to go actually do it. And because I've done this, it's amazing. Like now, if I see something, I'm resisting, it's like, okay, I'm resisting. That means resistance means I need to work on it. So like, what is it? So it's much easier to face it and go through and face it, feel it, deal with it, and do it. So it's an amazing process. Maybe I should write a book called Face It, Feel It, Do It. Was it? Face it, feel it, do it, and face it, feel it, deal with it, and do it. Maybe I should write a book. Anyway, it's going to be a chapter in my next book. We're doing another book. I'm not telling anybody about it because I don't want to spoil it. But this book, we're going for it on this book. New York Times bestseller, we're going for it. Okay, we have some more comments. It all depends on our attitude and approach to the instruction. We have to see that behind every instruction is a lesson to be learned and improvement to be made. Yes, resistance is painful. Face it, feel it, deal with it, and do it. That's it. Face it, feel it, deal with it, and do it. In the workshop, you also said the only way out of a problem is through it. Something like this. Yeah, that's what I said, yeah. How do we deal with with senior devotees if I seek instruction from them in certain practices or just some general questions? And all I reply I get is, you still have time, you are still too new, and so on. How to stop myself from feeling discouraged and seeking? You might want to ask somebody else, maybe someone else will help you. Or maybe you're just asking questions that are beyond what you need to know right now. So they might say, you still have time, could mean, you don't need to know this now. It's like the 8-year-old asking about sex. You have time, don't worry, you don't need to know now. So, Yeah, that's it. Okay. So I think we can stop now so that I can go take... Will you allow me to take breakfast now? Yeah, it's actually 9:35 here. If you want to talk more about this topic, we can talk more about it. It'd actually be good for me to talk about it because I'm re-evaluating my forgiveness workshop in terms of things which lend themselves to concepts and categories and charts and classifications. It's necessary for the book we're going to write. It has to be done that way because that's the way the best-selling books are done. So we can talk about it. It'll be about forgiveness, but it's just using forgiveness as a model, but it could be about anything. And then that would be nice. Maybe I'll do that tomorrow in our class with Sydney. Tomorrow is 12:15 Eastern Standard Time. Maybe I'll surprise them. And maybe Gurunishta, we can retitle the class I don't know. Yeah, just retitle the class. I don't know. I can't think. But I don't know if you sent an ad out yet, but you can wait and figure out something. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.